So a very thank you for coming to this workshop, how to build cloud-based applications 101. This workshop is actually brought to you by Special Awards 2021. For those who do not know what Special Awards is, it is a student tech competition. It is our 18th year running this year. And this year's theme, is how will digital intelligence and cloud transform Singapore in a post-pandemic world. So I think there are some IT professionals that is with us today. Yeah. So, but basically, in this competition, we actually encourage the youth and to actually challenge some of the issues that is happening around the society as well as some of our industries. Right. So registration closes on the 16th of July. So for the students who are keen to participate, do take note of this date. We will have our finals and showcase on the 24th of September. Right. So this year's theme is how will digital intelligence and cloud transform Singapore in the post-pandemic world. I think the point was that we wanted to challenge students to see how they can use artificial intelligence, how can they actually build applications on the cloud to really bring innovative solutions to solve some of the challenges that we have. Right. So students, for you to participate, you would have the opportunity to learn how to deploy applications on the cloud, and also be inspired to see how how some existing APIs are tapping on the benefits of cloud. So Special Awards is also one of the first student hybrid competition using both online and on-site platforms. So I mean, later you can see how we managed to did it, how we managed to do it. But right, so and I mean, the theme is actually very broad, right? So what we've done is we actually help the students break it down into about 10 other sub-teams. So we have, like community building, we have cybersecurity, each of these sub-teams actually have challenges of their own. And I think we want to encourage students to look into one of these 10 sub-teams to look for, to innovate on. But of course, we also keep it open, right? So the students can actually apply for the open category as well, right? So these are some of the, I mean, really some of the details of the competition. We have two categories. One is the pre-tertiary as well as the tertiary. So secondary schools, CIs as well as JC, you fall under the pre-tertiary tier category, and then IT, polytechnic, and universities are here. So if you can see here, the eligibility actually says that you need to have maximum, you can have a maximum 3 students from the same school, right? But I think we actually received some feedback saying, hey, you know what, I want to actually participate in this competition with a friend of mine who's in another school. Can we do that or not? The answer is yes, right? But what you need to do is that each team needs to appoint a mentor from the school. So whether you are a single participant or you are participating in 3, you need to find a mentor, and they will be the point of contact for the competition for you, right? So there are 3 stages to this competition: stage A, stage B, and stage C, right? So stage A, as we have shared, stage A submission closes on the 16th of July. And basically stage A, what we are trying to do is to really encourage students to do some ideation, some thinking, to really come up with ideas, identify certain problems that is in any of the 10 categories, and submit their ideas. So just idea only, right? And that so we are looking at a Word document or some images that can help you illustrate your idea. And then we move on to stage B, right? So in stage B, we will shortlist 40 teams, right? So these 40 teams, they will actually be these are the teams that will start proceeding, to work on their idea to change it into a prototype, right? And that's the reason why we have this workshop for today, and I'll explain a little bit later, right? So stage B's submission, basically you will have help, right? So what happens is that after you have gone through the stage A, in stage B, the Splash Awards will also plan some workshops that are more technical for you, that can help you in terms of your prototyping, as well as we also will assign mentors to your team to guide you along the way. So don't have to worry, right? We do have some really exciting activities and workshops for you guys. Now, stage 3 is where after going through stage B, we will then shortlist 12 for the finals, which is on the 24th of September. So we do have a guest of honor that day. So and it is open to the public to join us. So if you're keen to learn about what are the innovative ideas that the students have submitted, do join us on this day as well. Right. So yes, so as I've shared, we actually have prepared a series of workshops. I think we've done about 5 or 6 workshops for stage A, mainly focusing on ideation, ideation to prototype. This is actually our second session running. And it's happening next Monday. So for the students, if you're still a little bit lost about what do I do, what kind of ideas can I have, I think this is something that you might want to you might want to attend. No, actually, this workshop will help you guide you along of thinking how you can actually convert the idea to prototype. All right, so if you have any inquiries, please reach out to splash@scs.org.sg, or you can visit the website for more details. Right. So what is a competition without attractive prizes, right? So I think as I've shared, there are 2 categories in this competition, and the top prize is actually Apple MacBook Air. So each student in the student in the winning team, you will actually get a MacBook, right? So I find that MacBook is not really cheap, so I think it's a really very attractive price. But for the first runner up, and the second runner up, don't worry, because we also do have prizes worth up to 20,000 to be won in total. So the prizes are really a giveaway here. So I would encourage the students to give it a shot. Nothing to lose actually, because you actually start to gain a lot of experience, and you learn new things along the way in competitions, and that's really what gave me some experience along the way from in my career as well. So these are some past years photos in competition. Unfortunately, we cannot actually have them physical yet, right? But hopefully, things will get better, and we can meet up physically. So this happened in 2018. As you can see, we have Minister Siman to join us for this competition. Then this was in 2019, as well as 2020. Right, so 2020, you can see we did a very hybrid kind of solution. So the students actually went up to this virtual stage to present their ideas to the judges who are joining virtually as well, but they actually met up physically. So I do encourage the students to participate in the competition. I think it is a journey that it's a once in a lifetime kind of thing. So do join us, and we look forward to your entries. So yeah, same thing. Got any entries to look at splash at scs.org.sg. Right. If you have any questions, feel free to also ask in the group chat. The secretaries will support you. Will help to answer some of the questions. Right. Okay. Yeah. So let's get down to topic. Today we are here for. Yeah. So I would like to apologize to the participants. I am actually not really feeling very well today, so my voice is a little bit cracky. And it is actually supposed to be a 3-hour workshop, but I'm cutting it down a little bit, so that but I will still run through some of the demos and stuff like this with you guys. All right. So A little bit more about myself. My name is Jia Rong. I'm the Solutions Director of Noggin, a co-founder as well. So I've been in the industry for about 15 years. And, one of the, what I really enjoy doing is teaching IT students, really helping them to appreciate technology and enjoy technology. Because from my point of view, yes, sometimes, it's a little bit cumbersome, very, very hard to solve certain problems. But when you actually get to solve it, I mean, the sense of satisfaction is there. And that's something that I would like to, share with the students. So what's the agenda today? I'm gonna run through. It's a 101. So I can see there are some IT professionals here. So do pardon me, if these are very basic stuffs, right? So we are going through what is cloud, and then we have a short break. Then after that, I'll run through, what exactly do we do in the application side. Then I will run a small demo to share with you guys how I can quickly how you can quickly set up a demo, quickly put up a prototype, and then what you have been doing is actually more on in your own computer. We want to actually run through how do you deploy onto the cloud. Then run through some of the demos again, and last but not least, some tips for for this competition and Q&A, right? So what is cloud? Right. There are a lot of definitions in what is cloud, but I'm gonna just keep it very, very simple because we do have secondary school students with us today as well. And what is cloud is basically it is the delivery of computing services, right? So you have computers. See cloud as something that you cannot see, but you can rent a computer over the internet, right? And there are costs for you to have to own your own computing services, right? So the cloud actually enables you to gain computing power at a fraction of cost. So if you see some of the common services or common computing services that we use are servers, storage, databases, networking. We put software in there. We perform analytics as well as intelligence. Right? So if you see our computer as this one dot, cloud basically it's somewhere on the cloud on the top, and you will have many, many dots, right? That you can basically tap on. So that's what cloud is. So So there are actually three types of cloud that you can see that you will actually hear. One is private cloud. The second one is public cloud, and the last one is hybrid cloud. So what these three different cloud means, I would say they are generally more of the difference in the access of it. There are different requirements. So for example, some businesses, you don't want your data or your services to be hosted on the internet, right? So you want to put it in your own office. Schools, for example, they do have their own cloud as well, and they host it in their own environment. So the public cloud is basically, the general cloud that that we have access to. And hybrid cloud basically is a solution that allows us to, choose, okay, for this certain segment, I want this to be in my office. For this certain segment, it can be accessed via the internet, right? So these are the three types of cloud. Really just running through them so that, you can understand what are the things that we are talking about here in cloud. So how is cloud served, right? Cloud is served in three different, and they call it as a service model, right? So the three different models are basically infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, as well as software as a service. But actually, these are just the big three. There are actually a lot others that are coming up, and later I will share with you one of them, right? So clouds are served in these three types of services. And you can see, there is like database in here, you can do networking, you can actually have computing services, right? So these are the three as a service that you can have. So what is infrastructure as a service, right? Infrastructure as a service basically see as I am a shop that rents computers to you over the internet, right? Not only just computers, but I give you storage as well. I can also give you networking, right? So these are what infrastructure as a service typically they serve, right? In general, you deal with everything. Assume you can say I want a Windows computer, and then you'll be given a Windows computer. But you have to deal with all the other things that is happening inside, right? You need to install the app. You need to actually set up all the firewalls and stuff like this, right? So these are what infrastructure as a service will do. The next one is platform as a service. So what platform as a service does is, in general, they package the infrastructure into softwares or things that you can very quickly click and choose what are the things that you want to do, and they can pre-package certain solutions for you automatically, right? So that's what platform as a service will do for you. So really, it's software. You have software on top of that, but you still decide, what are the applications that you put inside there, what are the kind of services that you will engage in a platform as a service, right? The last one is software as a service. So in general, software as a service is really just providing you with software. How many, can I have a show of hands, how many of you guys use Dropbox or Google Drive? Anyone? If you do, please do raise your hand. Yep. So software as a service, Google Drive, Dropbox, these are considered software as a service. Why? Do you have access to the servers? You don't, right? You are provided with a software, and which is available on the web or in the cloud, and you basically make use of the services that it provides. So that's what software as a service is, right? So in a whole, I mean, looking from a overview point of view, right? This is how typically you would see, right? So there is, sorry, there is this one called an on-site. So on-site basically is, you decide, I want my own computer. I have to connect to my own routers and stuff like this. So the application layer, the data, the runtime, the middleware, the OS, virtualization, server, storage, networking, you have to do it on your own. Infrastructure as a service. Yep. So infrastructure as a service, you basically, you can see that the ones in the red side, the service provider manages it for you. So what it means is that you don't have to worry about having all your server racks. You don't have to worry about not having enough storage, because you say I want 10 gigabyte of storage. The cloud or the infrastructure as a service will give you the 10 gigabyte of storage, right? You say that I want this networking, this cloud to be only serving these 3 services or these 3 applications. You can do that as well. Right. So platform as a service, you can see it skips the runtime, the middleware, and the OS. Right. So basically, you cannot install any. You don't have access to the actual server itself, but you can deploy applications. Right. You can deploy some of your codes or some of your data onto the platform. The software as a service, as you can see, really the software as a service provider manages everything for you, and you are just a user inside there. Right. So as developers, I think we usually touch on, IaaS or PaaS. Right. Any questions so far? If you do, just pop them in the chat later during the break time. Be happy to address them. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So who are the cloud providers, the bigger cloud providers that are that is available to us today? There are actually a lot. There are small ones, there are big ones, right? So for example, Huawei Cloud is one of the cloud providers. We have Google Cloud, We have Alibaba Cloud, we have Amazon Web Services, we have Microsoft Azure, we have DigitalOcean, IBM Cloud, Linode and UpCloud. So all of these cloud providers, basically, they serve in general IaaS or PaaS for you, right? So they, I mean, the ones that are more later into the game, they generally have very, very simplified solutions for you to say, okay, I want 10 servers, and you can very quickly and easily start the 10 servers, right? Where else, Amazon Web Services is a market leader today, and they actually have a lot of applications inside their platform. Not only just infrastructure platform, they also have software on top of that. Right, so these are some of the cloud providers that you can think about implementing, or you say, oh, I need a computer with 10 gigabytes of RAM to process 1 million data for my idea, right, in AI, to generate the models and stuff like this. So I think you can explore these cloud providers to see which one fits your solutions the best, right? As I've shared, actually, the plan was, to get our participants to do some hands-on coding kind of thing. But after that, I think I made some adjustments to the schedule, and that I will do a demo to everyone instead. So this is the application portion, right? So we are actually building software, and we are putting them onto the cloud, right? So actually, a cloud-based application's definition is actually very simple. It is an app placed onto a cloud, right? So the main part is actually the application portion. How do you architecture it? What's the consideration factors? What do you use when you actually do develop an application? And these are some of the parts that I want to cover in this sharing. So an application, right? An application is basically a software that can be executed on a computing device, right? So you can actually deploy them on a web or on the desktop. You can use them on the mobile, so we call them mobile apps, or you can actually develop an application inside the hardware as well. So what I mean by hardware, right, is that you can actually develop some apps, some codes to make use of to enhance maybe a walking stick with certain capabilities, right? So these are what we typically do in an application. So we do have these channels that we can actually develop an application, and from there we actually look at what are the kind of um, applications are there, right? And in general, applications, we call them the front end and the back end. And what is the front end and the back end, right? Based on the picture that you can see over here, front end is something that the users can see, can interact. So as a front end developer, when you're developing the application, you look at what are the things that the user should see, how big, how small, how is the transition like and stuff like this. Now on the back end side, this is where the big brains are, right? Because when the user clicks on certain things, it actually triggers an instruction to somewhere, right? That will then process certain things. I think just now one of the participants was asking, Google Drive, how does Notably actually integrate with Google Drive, right? So what you see in Notably is the front end of things. Whatever that you interact and do the stuff, you draw, for example, on the board. All of these are actually sending instructions to the backend, right? And the backend is the one that will handle the things that the users have no control over. So a very, very typical use case of this, right, is, for example, payments, right? So the front end, the user selects the items, $10, $20, for example. You wouldn't want them to be able to change the numbers, right? If not, your business is going to crumble. So you put all this information in the backend where they have no access to, right? And then you can make you can make certain changes, logic in this. So the backend is the big brains. I would consider it, right? And it is the one that will communicate with the front end, and they usually serve we usually serve our backend in either REST, or recently there is a new trend called GraphQL, right? So these are the most common ways of sharing backend services. There are also others like SOAP, some other methods that you can actually communicate with your backend as well, right? So an application has a front end and the backend, and I think the front end is what you usually would do it as part of your design in the application, or design of the stuff. So these are things that we would actually put into thoughts. Okay, so for front end, what are the things that we're going to do, and the back end, right? The back end is actually the key. And I think one of the challenges that I would say, you as a participant may be worried about is that, what if I give a very big hoo-ha idea, and then I managed to go through to stage B, because it's really very innovative, but I have got no idea how to implement this, right? So I hope that through this session, it does help you to understand a little bit better, so that you can structure your thoughts, and you can see if this is something that can be achieved or not, right? So there are actually many frameworks that you can use, and in coding, basically frameworks are things that will reduce our efforts to achieve the development of the application, right? So I mean, I am very biased, right? Because I do web a lot, and that these days we can actually use web for mobile as well, and you can use web on the desktop as well. So there are typical these are some of the typical frameworks that you can use for the front end. So you have like React.js, you have AngularJS. Actually, AngularJS, you can use it for mobile as well. You can use Vue.js, you have jQuery. And for mobile, apart from the actual native one, which is like Java and Kotlin for Android, or iOS and Swift for Objective-C and Swift for iOS apps, that you can actually explore developing mobile applications using like React Native or Flutter or Xamarin as well. So these are frameworks that make it easier for you to develop the applications, right? They actually cut down the development time that's required, because it has a bunch of codes that is already done automatically for you. So these are, later in the demo, I'll be sharing with you guys, how to very quickly set up React.js front-end framework, and then how it integrates with the backend. So on the backend, it is a lot, right? So you can do like Django, you can do Laravel, you can do Express.js, you can do Rails, you can do KPHP, Flask, and ASP.NET. Right, so I'm not talking about programming languages here, but PHP is PHP, Express.js is JavaScript, ASP.NET is ASP, right? Rails is Ruby, but there are frameworks, and each of the frameworks that you use have its pros and cons, right? So these are some of the backend frameworks that you can consider, exploring using. My preference is actually Express.js. Very simple, just some codes, run, set up, just create a new file, type some scripts in there, and you're good to go already, right? So this is some of the backend frameworks that you can consider using, if you are going to be implementing a backend solution, right? So one of the things that I wanted to introduce you guys, right? So you can see, you are like saying, "Oh, Jiarong, you are trying to introduce to me what React.js, AngularJS, Vue.js, from July till September. I only have a few months, and you need me to learn all of these things to pass to go for the competition." Actually, the answer is no, right? Because if these are already the shortcuts, there are even shorter cuts. And that's what we do as software developers, right? We always want to, look for better ways to do certain things. And I wanted to introduce to you guys, this thing called Pass. Any of you guys have heard of this before? If you do, please raise up your hand. Any? No, no one. No one has heard of Pass before. Wow, I am surprised. Okay. Yeah, so Pass, right, is actually a platform, a framework or a stack, right, that you can use, and it has all the things that you typically need in a backend for you done, right? With very, very quick setup. And I love this because I use this for my prototyping as well all the time, right? Because I don't want to like start building all the codes and then later have to deal with the bugs and stuff like this just to connect to the database, just to, deal with file storage, just to do login, or these are really some of the very, very common features that when you build an app, you definitely would have to have, right? Whatever solutions that you use, you want to know who the user is, right? So these are some of the common solutions, common use cases or features that an application would typically have. And PaaS, they have all of these things set up inside. So let's expand a little bit more, on what PaaS has. The features that they have, right? So it is an application stack. Basically, from my point of view, it reduces the time and it's very, very easy to deploy. So later you'll see, right? So what it can do is, it basically already has all the built-in codes for you to communicate with the database. All you need to do is just to set the username, the password, and the URL. You're done, right? And you will be able to make use of, their codes that is already done to interact with the database. You can send push notifications. So whether you use PaaS on, on any of the supported platforms, you can actually send push notifications. You can actually do file storage as well, right? So like in your idea, maybe you require someone to take a photo, right? When you take a photo, where do you store the image, right? You need to have a file storage, right? And so PaaS in there has file storage. User authentication, like what I have shared, you need to know who the person is, right? And that's how you get to learn the users and stuff like this. So on top of that, I think this is one of the features that I really like, right? Because today, there are solutions that will allow you to authenticate with your Google account or your Facebook account, or your LinkedIn account, right? So PaaS actually also supports third-party authentication, that it allows you to basically very easily integrate, and then you can just put a button there and the users can do the login via luck or um, via Facebook or your Google account and stuff like this. And last but not least, I think this is the one that I'm really, really very, very happy about, right? Is that they have SDKs and libraries. So SDKs allows us to already have a safe kind of framework to build our application on top of. And this is just a quick screenshot of the platforms that it supports. So you can see we can actually implement this on Objective-C, which is like Apple. We can we can implement this on Android. We can implement this on JavaScript. We can implement this on Swift, Flutter, Dart, PHP, Xamarin, Unity, and so on and so forth. And the list goes on and on and on, right? So it's a one backend that allows you to really support many, many different kinds of front end that you require. And I think this is really one of the requirements when we build backends, right? Can it be integrated with this? Can it be integrated with that? If I want to build it in Apple, on Apple, do I have to build my own codes to interact with it? Right. So these are how this is where PaaS, I would say, it's also pretty strong in. They do give you a lot of SDKs that you can use, right? So really, these are some of the setup requirements that is required that is required for you. What do you need to set up PaaS? And I would say it's just three things, right? So first thing first, you need a computer or a server, right? Very straightforward for you, so that if you do this on your own computer, then yeah, it's your own PC. Database wise, you need to have a database, so either a Mongodb database or a Postgres SQL database. And last but not least, you just need to have Node.js installed, right? So if you do a quick Google of Node.js, they will have the installation instructions for you. So what I want to do is to really show you guys, how quickly I can actually set up the backend, so that I can really focus on the front end side of things, right? And that brings me on to my demo. Sorry. Can you guys see my screen? Right, so just going to PASS, right? If you search PASS platform, they'll bring you to this page over here. And this is where all the goodies are, right? They show you the SDKs, right? I only took a screenshot of this, but you can actually build this on Arduino as well. So, for those participants who say, hey, instead of building a website or I want to build a mobile app, I want to build something that is hardware, something that is maybe Internet of Things connected, that is connected to the internet, some hardware that is connected. You can also build this on Arduino or even embedded C, right? So these are some of the SDKs that you can use. And there are two very important features or services in PASS, right? So one is actually the PASS server, another one is the PASS dashboard, right? So what I will do is run through with you guys how to set up a PASS server, how to set up a PASS dashboard, and then how do you build this into your front end application using React.js. All right. So what I have here is a Visual Studio Code instance, a window, right? I've already created a folder called PASS demo, right? And I mean, for those who doesn't have a lot of programming experience, don't be so daunted about this. I think once you get the hang of this is actually very straightforward, right? So in terminal, we would have assumed that you have installed Node, right? How do you check is you just search node-v, it will tell you what is the version of the node that you have installed. And if you do this and it gives you this, then you have installed Node correctly. All right, so let's move on to the PASS server first, right? Because we need to set up the server. If you look into this is a GitHub repository with all the codes and everything. But you don't really have to do that because they have it very, very quickly for you unless you want to customize your codes. And you can see that you can actually deploy them locally or a Docker container. So Docker container is a container function that is actually leveraging on cloud technology as well, right? But I'm just going to show you guys how are we going to do this on locally. So you just copy this, right, which will then install the libraries that's necessary. There are two libraries here. One is the PASS server, one is the MongoDB runner. And what the PASS server does is basically it contains all the codes, for you to run the PASS server. And MongoDB runner, it is basically a library that allows you to start up, a MongoDB server for your own testing internally, right? So you can see that I have successfully installed the two applications, right? And moving back, right, they want us to start the MongoDB service. So what I would do is to set up the MongoDB runner start, right? When I do this, it will set up the MongoDB instance and it will start. So once this is once this command actually ends, right, we know that the MongoDB instance has been has started. And how do we start the PASS server? It's just this line, right, over here, okay? And this one, I'm going to actually copy and paste this over here because we will want to make some edits over here, right? So when you set up a PASS server, you need to define your own application ID, you need to define your own master key. Why? Because you can actually run multiple servers with multiple databases and stuff like this, right? So in here, maybe application ID, I will want to say 123, master key, I will leave it as master key, right? And the URL for the database is this as per default. But later on, during the cloud deployment, we will explore how we can actually change this to a database that is available in the cloud, right? So I'll just copy this and then I paste this in. Now, what it does is that it will then start the server, and you can see, right, these are all the configurations, which you can actually make some adjustments also depending on your requirements, right? But you can see the server URL is this, right? HTTP localhost 133.7 pass. So if you click on this, it's going to tell you error unauthorized, right? Okay, that's because for you to use pass, it already has all the authentication and everything set up inside, right? So if you want to use the pass platform, you have to set up with the proper authentications, right? But with this, it is telling us that pass is now running on my computer locally, all right? So with that, the pass server is set up, right? Let's see how things are like behind the scenes. And we use the pass dashboard to do this, right? So the pass dashboard, similarly, right, they have a bunch of codes and they release new versions all the time. But what you need to do is to install the dashboard first, right? So you need to install the codes on your PC. Now, when you're running like a server like this, okay, you need to keep this terminal open. If not, the service is going to stop, right? Because the servers only know to keep running when your terminal is open. So what you have to do is to actually click on this to select and start a new terminal, right? And then you paste this npm install -g pass dashboard, right? So when you click on this, it's going to install all the libraries that's required for it to run the pass dashboard, and you're going to see some magic, right? Right. So you can see the pass dashboard over here, right? That is successfully installed. Now let's move back. It says that you can launch the dashboard for an app with a single command by supplying the app ID, the master key, and the URL, something like this, right? So this is where the initial key that we set, the ones that comes in. So what's our app ID? Our app ID is 123. Right? What's our master key? Our master key is master key. So we have to change. And usually what you will do is you will automatically generate this using some hash numbers so that, it's not easily guessed, because this is like your username and this is your password, right? So we will actually go online and maybe do some random hash generator. And then you can just get some numbers out of this. Yeah, so you can use this, for example, as your ID and your passwords, right? Then the server URL is actually your database URL. So you have to copy this, right? No, this server URL, sorry, this server URL is actually the past server's URL. So if you go back to, our server's terminal, you can see that this is actually the URL. So http // right, localhost 1337/pass. So I'm just gonna put it here. I'm gonna paste it in. If you look into the documentation, right, it says optional name, so you don't necessarily need to put this in. Okay, so just gonna remove that, and then I'm gonna start the dashboard. So over here, I've installed the dashboard, and I'll start the dashboard. Right. So, and you can see how fast it is, right? In fact, actually, it's already set up already. And all you need to do is just to click on this, and it brings you to the dashboard page, right? So Pass already has this dashboard behind the scenes for you. 123 is actually the application ID, right? So whatever number, whatever name that you change, it will become that. And you can see that these are all the records that you have. You can set up webhooks, right? Webhooks that will run some cloud codes, or connect to Pass to your own server. That certain services will send some data over to your webhooks. You can actually do some jobs, right? So you can schedule jobs, right? So for example, if your solution will want to remind the users to do certain, maybe a patient to take their medication on a daily basis, you would then actually schedule a job over here to process the reminder for the patient to take his medication or something like that, right? So this is where you can actually define them, and the documentation is actually very, very well curated. So if you look into here, you click on this, right? And then you go to, let's just say JavaScript, you click on guide, and these are all the functionalities that you can use in here, right? So you can do, how do you deal with the objects? How do you do with the configs? How do you do with the error handling, and stuff like this. So these are things that you can actually set up. But this is actually the documentation for JavaScript, right? So the one that we did is actually the server. So you can actually look at the server's guide. So over here, you can actually configure certain things. They teach you how you can set up your database, right? They give you a tutorial on how you can set up as well. So Postgres, for example, this is how your screen, your URL should look like. How do you use it? Okay, you can set up this in your codes. And then how do you deploy in past servers, right? Um, and then push notifications, how do you configure push notifications, how do you hook up with Firebase FCM and stuff like this, right? As well as OAuth, you can see these are all the supported third-party authentication. And actually it's very, very powerful because it has LDAP, and some of the other very common authentications that enterprises use as well, right? So these are some, very, very easy and already, integrate, already done for you to really just start exploring and doing some experimentation or prototypings, right? So over here, you can schedule your jobs, you can look at logs, and you can set up some configs, and then there's the API console. So this is where you can, you can check, you can test your APIs. So for example, if I do a get, slash classes, then underscore users, right? Then we try it out, right? It will tell you, what is the results. Now, if we go to, the over here and let's add a user, right? Verified, username Jiarong, passwords 123, right? Okay, you can see that a user is already created. Then we can go to the API console. Username. Right. So you can actually test out your APIs over here, right? I think I didn't put the correct path over here, but yeah, you can actually set this up. You can also this is where you can also send a message to all of your users. So if you want to test any of the push notifications, you can also you can do this. So you can see that very quickly, right? I don't have to build an admin portal. I don't have to build a backend. I don't have to, go into the database to look at my data. You can see that there's a session, there's a row. I can create a new class, like for example, maybe let's say cars, right? So I can just create a cars in here, and then I can add a new column. Maybe I would call it car model. Right? Is it a required field, yes or no? So you can set it, right? Then you can have the model. So you can do like the model will be maybe C3 or something like that, right? Then you can actually fetch the data over here already. So the platform, the PaaS platform actually allows you to manage and look at your data very easily. These are all set up very quickly with, you can see, I think less than 6 lines of codes, right? So I hope that you can see how easy it is for you to set this up, because if what I shared with you in the front actually scared you, right? I wouldn't say so, because there are things that is very easily and readily available for you, and this is one such solutions that you can consider during your prototyping. So any questions for me for PaaS at this point of time, at this point? Okay, we'll address this question later, Esther. Yeah. So yeah. So I hope that you can see how PaaS can really help you with your prototyping. It's very easy for you to implement this. You can have a database very quickly set up for you, right? Now let's try to set this up with a front end. right? So there's some coding involved. I hope you guys can bear with me. So what I'll do is I'm stopping all the servers, right? And basically removing whatever things that's here. Now, if you search for React, which I have shared with you guys, React.js, there is a bunch of tutorials that you can also look at, right? So you can go to the tutorial, but they have this Create React app, which is a very, very fast way for you to get started. Just also one line of command and you can do that. So I think if you explore more, you'll be able to find what's the command. But the command is actually npx create react app, and then you do a full stop so that I want to install my create react app on this folder. Right, so you'll run through the script and you ask you for some, you set up the whole entire project for you. Yep, so what it is doing now is basically installing all the dependencies and libraries. Right, and we are done. So you can see over here, right, how we start it is we call yarn start. So yarn start. And what will happen is that it will start the development server and this is your website. Right. So you can see, it very quickly, you already have an application. You can start doing your codes and your logics over here, right? For you to do whatever that you need in your application. So let's try to implement implement the past application. So same thing, right? Because this is a terminal and this is a server, we have to start a new server, if a new terminal, if you want to run some commands, right? So just now we have actually what we need to do is to then start our past server again, as well as our dashboard, so that we can have access to the backend. So I'm gonna just run this. All right, then another one more. Let's start. Okay, so just very quickly to test to see if it's working. Yep, it is. Is my cast here? Yep, it's still here. All right. Now let's try to integrate the front end solution with the backend solution. And because this is React.js, basically it is JavaScript. So therefore, we should be looking at the JavaScript SDK, right? So, let's go to the JavaScript. Let's go to the guide. Right, they will tell you that the easiest way to integrate is through the npm module. So you click on this, they will tell you to run npm ipass, right? So that's what you will run. Okay, so in here, in the project folder, I will run npm install pass. Right, so what it's doing now is that it is installing the entire pass libraries onto the thing, into the project, and they show you, right, this is how you can actually, this is how you can set up pass, or how you can get pass, and how do you do the configuration. Right, hold on. So aside the JavaScript guide. So assuming that now we have installed pass, it's still installing right now, but we can still move on. Okay, we want to go to the we want to set up pass in our codes. And in JavaScript, basically everything starts in the index, right? So this is where we will, this is where we will set up, we will load pass, and then right. So you need to call pass initialize, right? And this is where you get your app ID and your JavaScript key, right? Okay, so JavaScript key is required only if you have it on server. So in my case, I only have the app ID. I didn't set up my JavaScript key, so I want to initialize, right? Anyone remembers what's the app ID that I said just now? Anyone? Yep, 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll set this up as 1, 2, 3. Once this code is initialized, we can see that we will know that pass is set up properly, right? And we also have to set the URL, right? So our URL, okay, our URL will be the URL that we set up over here, which is this thing, this URL here. All right. Okay, so once we are done with this, okay, actually we are good to go. We are set up ready. Hold on. Okay, we need to close the project first. Right. So basically, as a developer, what you do is you can inspect, to see what is happening behind the scenes, right? There is no error over here, so we can assume that, the things are working fine, right? So let's try to fetch our cars in our in this database, right? So you can actually do objects, right? This is how you can store information in the objects, right? You can set score 1337 and stuff like this, right? You can retrieve objects. So this is when you get based on the object ID, but what we want to do is to list the cars, right, that we have in our system. So let's try a query instead, right? So basically you extend the object that was created, and the object that we created in here is actually called cars, right? So what we are going to be doing is that in the app.js, this is where we are going to be loading the information, right? Okay, so we need to require pass here. To load the library properly. Right, so we are going to call this cars. Okay, so now we have cars that is an object, right? And then we want to query this up, right? So to query it, you will create a new query, and then you can actually just say query.find. So what I want to do is I don't want to filter anything, so I will just query with no rules or no engagement. So I'll just call query the type of cars. Okay, and what will happen is that I will get a list of cars that I can get, right? Which can be found in here. So okay, so this one is just some codes that we need to begin. Okay, Okay, so what we're doing over here is that we are creating a function so that when the use effect comes in, it calls this function. Right, so now we get the results. Right, let's console.log the results. Okay, let's try it out. Yep. So you can see we got a pass object subclass, and there you go. You can see we have a class, right? So what are the attributes? We can see model C3 over here, right? So it is very easy for you to, fetch the information and to push information on the platform. So, just like, for example, you want to actually do some analysis and you want to store some of the results, right? Some of the insights or things through the AI platform. This is, the PaaS platform could be something that you can use to store the information, right? So what I can do here is that, with these results, of course, I can change the UI a little bit to show, what are the kind of cars that we have over here, and whatever database that we choose, whatever that we put in the dashboard over here, right? For example, I can just create a new one and then say C1, right? So you can see that it's created. Now, if I refresh the page, you can see that I got two objects now. One would be C3, another one would be C1. Right? So this is really how very quickly you can make use of the of the PaaS platform to just do some integration, do a very quick prototype on some of your ideas to test bed, to see, can we how do we solution this out, right? And to the participants, who will be submitting their entries, you don't have to worry about that, right? Because we do have mentors that will guide you guys along the way as well. And there are technical workshops for you guys. All right. So I'm gonna take a pause here. Any questions from me so far? All good? If it's good, please give me a thumbs up. I can know that I can move on. Okay. If not, then yeah. If you have any questions, just feel free to put them into the codes. How do we know which are the relevant segments of codes to use from the user documentation? So that is something I will share with you in the very, very good question, right? So I think as a developer, this is really one of the challenges. Like, wow, you send me a bunch of codes, what do I do? So let me, I will share with you some tips and tricks that you can use. Okay, but let me move on back to the next part of the workshop first, right? Then after that, we'll have the sharing. Now, the third part is actually deploying to cloud. It is very, very straightforward, right? So what you guys have seen in my demo here is basically setting up a server or three servers, right? The website, the backend, as well as the dashboard. Three servers on my own PC, right? Now, if you ask yourself, right, if you want to deploy a solution, let's just say Grab, for example, does it make sense to use it to put it on your PC? What if 1 million users suddenly hits you, right? So you need to have that hardware requirements to support that kind of huge search of things. What happens if your house internet is down? What happens if your Wi-Fi card spoils, right? All of these are common issues, that as if you deploy your applications on-prem, right? Remember the on-prem, right? The company, has to have a IT person that will have to take care of all these things. And that's why, there is this solution for you to make use of cloud, to push everything out there, and the service provider will deal with all of these issues for you. So you focus on, getting your Windows, and you can set up and install the things that you need. So the common things, that we use in clouds. There are actually a lot of other use cases, but really the most common ones, we use cloud for database, we use cloud for server, we use cloud for storage, and we use cloud for networking, right? So imagine, you are at home today, right? So everybody is actually working from home, and there are some sensitive information that you can only access when you're in the office, right? So virtual networking actually comes in as a solution for you, and these are one of the cloud service provider, right? Whereby you connect via the internet and go in and join a cloud, which is known as a VPC, right? So cloud storage, server, and this is the solution to the problem that I've addressed earlier. Why? Because my computer, I have to keep it 24/7 for the server to run. If not, it's going to shut down and the service of the application will not be there. But with the cloud server, I decide when to shut it down. I decide when to keep it up. And when I say keep it up, right, it is the platforms or the service provider's responsibility to make sure that it is up. All right. So these are things that cloud services actually solves, and that's why cloud is really one of the key breaking technologies that enables a lot of new technologies like artificial intelligence, and stuff like this. And why is this so, right? Last time, if let's say we want to set up a lab to do research on certain things that we want to run through using AI models, we need to have a computer that's super duper strong, right? And how do we own that, right? The lab would have to invest a lot of money to buy the hardware and stuff like this. But today, with cloud, that is the responsibility of the platform owners, right? We say that we want something with 300 gig of RAM, and their platform will allow us to get 300 gig of RAM. So it enables us to move on with some of the hardware challenges that we have faced. And that's why cloud really enables a lot of other new technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning and stuff like that, right? So now, if you have seen how PaaS have done it, can be installed and set up on your own thing, on your own PC, right? Let me introduce to you Back4App, right? After this slide, I'm actually going back to the demo again because really deploying to cloud is just that straightforward, right? But basically Back4App is very, very clear cut, and you will be able to see how it works later. And from my perspective, I love it, right? Because well, you saw I've done like the 6 lines of codes, and now I don't even need to do it. I just click buttons only, right? And you see that I actually introduced, right, that on cloud there are 3 different types: infrastructure, platform, as well as software. But over here, Back4App is actually classified as a backend as a service, right? So there are a lot of terms coming up, in the industry, and backend as a service is also something that we also see and we use as well. But basically, backend as a service is that you do a few clicks and it gives you the entire backend and you can do whatever you want with it, right? And they manage the servers, they manage everything for you, right? So I'm going to show you guys how is it that we are going to deploy on a cloud database first, right? I'm going to just set up a Mongodb database so that I don't need to use my local database, and then change and update my database on Mongodb on PaaS servers so that we can connect to the MongoDB's database. So MongoDB also has a free tier, so this is MongoDB. Right, so MongoDB is another kind of database, which is called the document-based database. The more common ones that we know of are like SQL databases, right? So let me just hook up to the account. Right, and basically I will just start a new project in here. There is also a free tier for MongoDB. right? So I'm going to say parse demo. Okay, I'm just going to set myself, create the project. And I want to create a database, and they call it a cluster in here, right? So I'll build a cluster. You can see that there are these few tiers. Each of them has its own benefits. So depending on which stage you are at, when you're serving 10 customers versus 100 customers versus 1,000 customers, the requirements are very different. So in this case, I'm going to just choose the shared cluster, which is free. Right, so you can choose to deploy your solution, whether your database on AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure, depending on your requirements. So in my case, I'm going to set Singapore, AWS, then they give you the free tier stuff. So let's create a cluster. Right. So as you can see over here, right, if let's say we want to do this ourselves, you saw just now how we did it, right? You had to run some codes, you had to open up your terminal, you had to keep the terminal on and stuff like this. And how cloud actually helps you is this, right? Because it automates the things for you. You say that you want a cluster of a cluster for this database under the sandbox, you get it, right? It just runs some scripts behind the scenes and you get the database that you need. So these are really the power of cloud, and how it really enables you to to do certain to solve certain different problems and challenges. I'm just gonna refresh the page, see if it's done. Yes, it's still deploying. Okay, I think in the meantime, what we can do is to start creating the access to the database. So we want to create a user. So we're going to just set a password. So user, and then for the password, right? So you can read and write to any database, right? You can set this. Oh, okay, looks like I had to auto-generate it. Okay, so I'm going to rename this to demo. And then add user. So what we've done here is that we've created a user account called demo to connect to this database, right? In which it's almost done. It's configuring the Mongodb. Yep, looks like we are done. Yep. So what happens now is that you can just click on connect, and you will say, okay, I'll allow only my IP address for now. Right, so choose a connection method. Basically, I want to connect with my string, and this is the URL. So first, let me just copy and paste the password here. Right, so include the full driver code. Okay, so this is, so you saw that over here in the database, right, we set it as MongoDB localhost test, right? So now, because I've already set up a database on my on the cloud, I will then change the database over to this URL instead, right? And of course, I have to update the password. Okay, so this one, same thing. You can put it in here. No, this is correct. Yeah. So once we're done with this, right, when we set this up, we can see that the database that is connected in the server is actually going to be a little bit different. So let's see. I'm going to copy this code here. right? So because just now I created two cars, right, and the two cars are actually in the previous database, and now I'm connected to this database on the cloud. I wouldn't expect to see in here. Sorry, need to add the string. Yeah, so you can see that the database is still running. And then now over here, when I refresh the page in my dashboard, wait, okay, can I just restart this? Okay, so back to dashboard. Yep. So you can see that the previous data, right, is lost already, because it's now connected to the database over here in this cluster. So you can actually do your own collections and stuff like this. So these are the things that you can that we now know that you are connected to this to the another database. So this is basically how you can quickly set up the stuff. Okay, I think there's some server selection error, but yeah. But all in all, I think the concept is there. That you can see that that's how you can quickly set up a cloud database to to implement and connect up with your PaaS framework. Now, I mentioned about build for app, right? So let's go to build for app. Oh, back to app, sorry. And basically going to back for app, you can then sign in, with your GitHub or your Google account. It uses the PaaS platform, right? So this is basically a software that is on top of the code that is already done. So I can just create one, that says PaaS, right? And then I create, and this is what happens behind the scenes. So it creates a database, the application layer, sets the firewall and stuff like this for you behind the scenes, and then you get yourself a dashboard, you get yourself a URL, you get yourself the things that is necessary for you to change over here in your configuration, right? And how we do that, you can see over here, this is exactly the same, right? But they have a lot more other settings. So you can see, for example, the JavaScript key, because we're using JavaScript key over here. So we need to implement the JavaScript key. And over here, this is the application ID. I'll copy the application ID. And I need my URL. So my URL will be remember where to get the API. I think it's this one. So you can set, JavaScript, for example, and then they teach you how you can connect to JavaScript over here. Yeah, so it's actually gonna be PaaS API. Yep. So once we do that, when we go to our React page and then we connect, right, you can see we have got no results. So it's actually connected in this database over here already. Yeah. So let's go to here and let's just restore some of our things that we have done. Cars. So I create a class, and let's just say I want the brand now, right? Okay, so I will create a new brand, a new car with the brand Toyota. Okay, now when we refresh the page here, you can see now we have our object. You can see the attributes, and the brand is Toyota, right? So I mean, this is how. So I hope you actually understand through this workshop what it is like to be building an application on your own PC and then moving forward to deploy them onto the cloud, right? Because a cloud-based application basically is an app that is hosted on the cloud. That's really how it is being defined. And with that, I actually come to the end of the workshop segment. The portion behind it's really mainly more on some of the tips for our participants. But I think what I will do is that we can actually take some time to address the questions and the floor after the tips, right? But spend me some time to really just run through some of the tips for the students. So for special awards, these are the submission requirement. If you really look into the name of the project, the challenge sub-teams, opportunity, you'll see, wow, this is like a bunch of things that I actually have to sign. I actually have to fill in, right? But in the previous workshop that we have actually conducted, which is ideation to prototype, and that's a workshop that will happen next Monday as well, right? We actually ran through saying, okay, from an idea, how do we expand further? How do we think about the implementation? And by going through the entire process, actually, we have the answers for all of these things ready. So what I would do is, really for you guys to really look at what are to look through the submission requirements, and I encourage you guys to, sit in for the upcoming session on Monday, so that you can really get some idea on how you can actually set up how you can go from how you can actually translate your idea into a document, for submission. So that's one of the things. Yeah, so you can actually include, right, no more than 5 accompanying images, right? I think as a basis, some of the past submissions that I've seen, I've seen an image of just one screen, right? Actually, I do suggest, or I do recommend you to, you can create an image or graphic, that explains the persona of the person. For example, what were some of the challenges that you faced? And if you see over here, this is how Slack actually shares, the features of their application as well, or whether it's application or their solutions, right? So get creative. I think there are many ways for you to showcase your ideas. It doesn't necessarily have to be a UI. It doesn't necessarily have to be a screen, right? And you can have 5 accompanying images, and I mean, it's really a very, very good number that you can really use to articulate your ideas. So that's one. Tip number 2, right? So landscape. I think with the team and the sub teams, I think one of the things that you can also really look at, right, is to say, what if COVID-19 were to happen 10 years ago? What would have been the difference, right? And today, that difference, does it create new challenges or not? I think this is something that you can also look at, right, to explore and get some new ideas. For example, today, everybody, because of COVID-19, everybody is working from home. Do you think working from home doesn't bring you new challenges? I'm sure it does, right? So these are some of the areas that you can also, you can put yourself into context in the industry and look for solutions, right? The third one is actually judging criteria. So if you look at, feasibility, originality, creativity, relevance to team, the impact on target audience, I think all of this are really relating to how you articulate your idea, how feasible it is. Basically, in terms of feasibility wise, as long as it's as long as it's a solution that can be implemented, that solves a certain problem, it is feasible, right? Then there's originality. I think a lot of the participants will want to do something very special, very different, right? I think not only does that count, that is one way of looking at originality, but you can also look at how, you can use existing solutions differently, put together a solution. And from my perspective, that's also considered original and unique, right? So creativity and relevance to team, impact to impact to target audience, right? So these are some of the judging criteria for you guys to actually look into, and this is how we actually do our judging, right? So in stage B and C, you can see that there's a new one, which is the execution or idea, right? So this is where you will have a lot of help in. I mean, as a we do have a lot of workshops, to help you guys and to guide you guys along. Something similar to this, but it's not a one-on-one, it's a more in-depth solution, right? Yeah, with that, I'm done with my tips. Let's move on with the Q&A session. So Kai Chen actually asked, how do you know what are the relevant segments of codes, right? I'll be honest with you, this has to come a little bit with experience, right? But my take is there is no harm trying, but you need to really understand what you're trying to do here. So for example, right, if you read these codes, okay, what you can see, generally, if a good documentation will explain to you, how this is the case, right? So a query, they will say a get isn't powerful enough because you want to list, right? You want to list objects, okay? So over here, it goes down saying, okay, pass object extend game score, right? Which is part of the object's explanation. And then you create a query for game store. Things are logical, right? Query is equals to player name, then, right? And then fine. So if you really look at this and this is what you want to achieve, right? In my case, I wanted to find the list of cars, right? So I would then see, okay, constant car, pass object, extend car, right? And then do I want to do any filter or not? If I just want C3, for example, then maybe I'll say equals to make C3, right? So this is how you make your adjustments accordingly to what you require. And I mean, in typical, the codes that are here usually are things that you will need to use. So I hope that answers your question.